everybody, it's Ros from North Mayo Fine Art. Today I am going to show you how to make your own homemade blending stumps, and here are two that I made myself this morning, and I'm going to talk you through how to do it in this video so you can make your own blending stumps. So what you need to do is get a piece of A4 printing paper, which is what I have here. And out of one A4 sheet of printing paper you can make two blending stumps. So what we do first is we fold it in half, and we score it down the central fold, and then turn it over and score it again down this one, like so. And then we rip it down the centre. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, so please don't worry. If you prefer to use scissors, that is absolutely fine, but I just want to show you a way that you can actually do it just by using the printer paper and the tape. So now we've got half of the A4 sheet, and what we're going to do is fold it around about 3/4, maybe slightly less of the way up the width, across the width of the now A5 piece of paper. So we're going to fold it there, and we're going to score it again, like so, and then fold it over and score again on the fold line, like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rip this triangle off because we don't need that section. And it doesn't matter if you rip it and it's not straight, because you won't see this section, which is perfect, seeing as I've made rather a mess. So what you do then is you start off on this line here, and you start by very carefully folding it and rolling it very gently. Now the best thing I can suggest you do is you actually put a piece of tape at the top of your piece of paper and tape it to your table, because you want to be able to actually manipulate it without worrying about it moving all over the place. As you can see, I'm now pulling that, and it's not actually coming off. So use your two thumbs and your two index fingers and just start very carefully rolling it. Now this can take a while to do. Please don't worry if you don't get it straight away. You're just wanting to manipulate the paper so that it will start rolling. Just moving it forwards and backwards with your fingers until it starts moving on its own. Try and make it as tight as you can, because you want a nice tight roll when you're making a blending stump. So just keep going forwards and backwards with it. And you want to make sure this is the edge, this straight edge is the edge that you're actually going to be making the point on. So make sure the straight edge is to the right and that the corner that you've cut off is to the left. And this is going to be where the point, but you want to make it so it's slightly uneven when you're rolling it. So I've now got mine started, and it's a nice tight roll. And what you want to do is actually roll it so that you're rolling this end of it slightly faster than you're rolling this edge. Because what you want to do is make this edge of it just come out ever so slightly. So just keep ever so slowly going up. And can you see how this is now ever so slightly coming out from the edge? Well, this will carry on doing that as we progress up the piece of paper. I'm going to do it like this so you can see. Can you see how that's now coming out from the edge there? That's what we want. So we keep going up, making sure it's as tight as we can get it. It's not so desperate that this end is tight, but you do need this end to be as tight as you can possibly get it. So we keep going up, and if it starts loosening up, just unravel it and tighten it up again, making sure that it's as tight as it can possibly be. And just keep going up. Now if you're worried about it getting too long and too thin, we just bring that down a small bit. If you're worried about making it too long and too thin, then by all means unroll it and try and straighten it up a little bit. I'm not too worried about it being whether it's too thin, because I'm going to show you a different technique in a minute which will make a thicker one. I do apologise for my hand being in the way. I'm trying to keep it out. And there we go. So as you can see, I taped the top of the paper to the table. So I'm just going to keep rolling up now. I'm going to take that piece of tape off, because I'll use that piece of tape to actually secure the whole pencil, or the stump. So just keep rolling it up nice and tight as you can get it, like that. And once you've got to there, you've got to the end and there's just the one little point left, get a piece of tape. I'm actually using low tap masking tape for this because I have it handy, and it's actually quite easy to actually sand, because we'll be sanding these with sandpaper. So you then put your tape down the length, making sure that you've got it on the actual corner as well, and flip it over, and you can see now that you've got the tape on both sides, and the corner of just the very, very corner point is just there. So then you're going to roll this side of the tape in first, like that, and then roll this side of the tape over the top. Now what I generally tend to do is, once I've finished this, section, I will get either a pair of scissors or a scalpel, which I don't appear to have at hand at the minute, which is really helpful. I get a pair of scissors or a scalpel, and I would just cut it off around about there, and then I would tuck in. I would cut it ever so slightly higher up than where the tape ends, and then I would just tuck in the top bit to make it nice and neat at the top. And then what I do is I get a piece of sandpaper. Now this is fine grade sandpaper, which is well used. It would be better to use a clean piece, but this is what I have to hand. And what we're going to do is go down. Now I'm rotating this all the time with my fingers. I've got it in my hand like that, and I'm rotating it all the time with my fingers. So what we do is we go along, and we're just trying to actually sand the very tip. So every time you bring it down in a stroke, you then flip it over before you start going down another stroke, and then rotate it again and go down another stroke, rotate it and go down another stroke. And you continue to do that until you get the point as you'd like it to be. Like that. And there we go. There's a nice fine pointed blending stump that you've made yourself. Now there's another way of doing it. If you wanted to make a slightly thicker one, again, you take take the other half of the A4 sheet that we've already used, and again, fold it about 3/4 of the way up and score it with your fingernail, or you could use the handle of some scissors or whatever you have to hand, but I will just use my fingers. And then again, you rip the triangle from the edge. And again, it's not going to be the neatest job in the world, but you can get the general gist of what I'm doing. So again, we start it here, and I'm going to take another piece of tape. I'm using my low tack masking tape, and just get another small strip, and I'm going to tape it up onto the table so that you can see what I'm doing. So, like that. And then I'm going to start it again. Now the difference this time is I'm not actually going to make it as thin this time. I want to make it slightly thicker, to make a slightly thicker blending stump. So what we need to do this time is start it off so that it starts rolling. Sometimes it's really simple to do this, and other times it's so hard. So there we go, I've got it started now. It was much quicker this time. Now instead of immediately veering off to the right to make the thin end, what I'm actually going to do this time is I'm going to keep it straight to start with. You can actually do it straight on the table like this as well if you want to, like that. So we're just going to keep going up in a straight line to start with to make a slightly thicker stump, and then keep pulling it back to make sure it's as tight as it can be, and then keep going up, and make sure you stay for I'd say the first half of the paper. Make sure you stay in a straight line. Can you see how that's staying straight on the edge just there? So keep going up like this, and only when we get about halfway up start veering out ever so slightly. And as you can see, I'm just starting here just to edge out ever so slightly, but I don't want to move very high up here with the actual twist of the paper, so I'm keeping it really tight and keeping it quite close. Keep going up until you get to the top, and I'm just going to pull that off again, and I'm just going to keep rolling until I get right to the end. And you can see this is an awful lot closer. If you look at that one and look where my rolls are there, it's an awful lot closer than where my rolls ended here, because the rolls ended there. So you can see the comparison between the two. Those rolls ended there, so I've got a very fine tip on that one, and these rolls have ended here, so I've actually got a much thicker tip. And don't worry about the hole in the centre there, because when we sand it, that will actually disappear. So I'm now going to put my tape, instead of putting it with this corner piece in the centre of the tape, this time I'm going to put the tape right at the edge of there, and I'm going to continue to put it down the length of the blending stump, and then I'm going to turn this side in again like so, and then I'm going to roll this side in. I'm going to use the table to roll it, make sure it's very firmly stuck like so, like that. So now you can see that is a much thicker tip than that one. So what we're going to do again is we're going to get the sandpaper and we're going to sand this. And we're going to pull it up as we're sanding from almost where my finger is, and then flick it as we get to the end. And we're going to continue to rotate it like so. It doesn't matter which way you rotate it. You can rotate it clockwise or anti-clockwise. The main thing is that you rotate it to keep the sanding even. Like so. And if you wanted to just sand the very, very end, you can sand the very, very end, like so. And just rotate it as you're actually sanding it. Like that. And there you have two small blending stumps, which are completely handmade and used from one piece of printer paper. Now if you want to make a much bigger paper stump for your larger areas of your drawing, then again you can do a similar thing, and you can use a full A4 sheet. This is a full A4 sheet here. Go to the width, the thinner length of the paper, and again you want to cut the triangle, because by cutting the triangle you are thinning out the excess paper, so the actual stump itself that you're holding isn't going to be quite as big and bulky, because the most important part of the blending stump is the tip of it itself. So again, I'm going to come through and I am going to rip the triangle off like so, and try and do a neater job than I have been doing. Again, like I said, you can, if you prefer to use scissors to make it lovely and neat, then that's absolutely fine. So now we've got the full A4 sheet, and we've got the end, we have the area that we've ripped off, and we have the full length of the A4 sheet. So what I want to do again is get some tape, using the tape again, ripping a small section off, making sure you can actually see. I might zoom out just a touch. There we go. So we've now got the paper. Now I'm going to attach that to the top, like so. And then we're going to start from the bottom again. Now it's completely up to you whether or not you want to make it so that it's pointy like the first one we did, or whether you want to make it slightly bigger like the second one we did. It will naturally end up bigger anyway because we're using a full A4 sheet. So it will end up being the actual tip of it will end up being much bigger anyway. But it just depends on at which point you start to angle it. It will depend on how big the actual tip is. Just trying to get it started. Like I said, sometimes it's really simple and other times you can be here for ages. Now, there we go, I think we've just about made a start on it there. And make sure it's as tight as it can be. And it's not too desperate about this end being tight, like I said before, because that is just the top and you'll actually cut a majority of that off. It's this edge that you really need to concentrate on making as tight as you possibly can. So there we go, I've made a start on it now. So what I want to do is continue up this roll, continue up the paper, and I want to stay quite close to the edge for the first section. As you can see, I'm very, very slowly rolling. And I'm just starting to edge out now, just past the edge of the paper. But again, I don't want to go too fast. I'm just going to continue to roll up like that, keeping this one nice and this edge nice and tight. And if you think you're going too far out too quickly, roll it back down and then start going up it again. Like so. I don't feel that this is tight enough, so I'm going to concentrate. And as you can see, I've got it in between my thumb and my index finger, and I'm rolling it just with those 2 fingers at the very edge, but I'm using 3 fingers in the centre. So now I'm coming up, I'll take that off, and I'm going to continue to roll. But this time I'm going to actually hold the stump in my finger as I'm rolling it to make sure it's as tight as it can be. I'm going to take this tape off here because I'll be using that to actually attach it afterwards, like so. Continue to roll it up like that until we get to the end, and then I'm going to put this on here like that. And again, continue to roll the tape in the direction that the paper's being rolled, because that will then give you a really nice tight finish, like that. And then make sure that's secured down before you roll the other side back over the top, like so. And then I always like to roll it on the table to make sure it is completely fastened down. Get my sandpaper, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to sand this one down. Now if you just sand the point on this one, and don't worry about the actual up the stump. If you just go around, and as you can see I'm still rotating it constantly as I'm doing this, because you want to make sure that the paper is actually being sanded very evenly. Like that. And just keep going along until you have it how you want it. If you've got get any fluffy stuff like this at the end, just brush it off with your fingers and carry on. What you can always do if you want to make the end really nice and smooth is hold it up. This is the only time I will ever tell you to do this, because when I've talked about my blending stumps before, I've always said never go in circular motions or side to side because it makes it fluffy. But when you're making your own blending stumps, if you want the end to be really nice and smooth, you just take it round in circles, just the very, very end. And can you see how all the fluff, if you like, is coming off the end? That's because it is making it fluffy. And then if you go around again, going only in the one direction, you can see that that has actually made the end really nice and smooth. And you will have this little hole just at the very, very end. But if you just keep sanding this, and you can even sand it, as long as you regularly change the direction with which you're sanding it, it's not a problem. Like that. You can see that that's smoothing out nicely. And then if you want to make it to a point, you sand around the very bottom edge. Like so. And you continue to go round and round, rotating it as you go. That gives you a really nice point. So you've now got that one, and you have these two, so you can see that you've got 3 different sizes there. And if you wanted to make that one even bigger, you keep the rolls tighter to the end, and if you wanted to make it a finer point, you would obviously start bringing your rolls out more quickly. But that is a really easy way of making paper blending stumps at home and not having to spend a fortune on actually making them. All you need is a bit of tape, a little bit of sandpaper and some printer paper. So that's all for today. If you are interested in seeing any of my work, please head over to North Mayo Fine Art. If you want to take part in my group Draw Along, then please go on to North Mayo Fine Art Drawing Techniques and request to join, and either myself or one of the moderators will accept you as soon as possible. And thank you very much for watching this.